on LBC.
I was right, of course. When I'm not totally certain of something, I like to say as I understand it, or if memory serves, because it's really important when we're dealing with facts, of course, as journalists, and we deal with so many in the course of a 4-hour show that you can't be expected to know absolutely everything. But when we're dealing with facts, we don't want to give the impression of certainty when we are not certain. But I was right. The Hamas party won the Palestinian legislative elections on the 25th of January 2006 after Ariel Sharon had pulled Israelis out of that area. 0345 6060 973. You've got a problem, haven't you, when extremists are democratically elected? There are some who think Donald Trump is an extremist of sorts. I'm certainly not a fan, but we have to wrestle with the fact that he is democratically elected. There are plenty of people, myself included, who thinks that the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is not a sympathetic politician, to say the least, to put it politely, and he's democratically elected as well. There is a real difficulty, I think, in Israel, in the Israel-Palestine conflict, that there's intractability, that there is a hardening on both sides, a calcification on both sides, that the hope that at least we believed in, didn't we, in the early 1990s, the Oslo Accords, when Arafat was talking to Rabin, before, of course, Rabin was assassinated. Yitzhak Rabin with Shimon Peres as his right-hand man. There was hope back then. Is there still hope? What can we do about a conflict where some people insist on their right of return? The Israelis, meanwhile, the Israeli state, meanwhile, has been building, not just on the West Bank, but in East Jerusalem as well, making a two-state solution very, very difficult indeed to achieve. It's one thing to remove, as I said, I think 9,000 Israelis from Gaza back in 2005. Quite another to attempt to remove 500,000 Israelis from the West Bank. But there are a very great number of Israeli Arabs. They are living in Israel, in the democracy that is Israel. There are question marks as to whether they are in practice afforded the same sorts of rights on a daily basis, but they do live within the Israeli state, and there are, of course, as I say, a lot of Israelis living within the West Bank. So maybe the future for a two-state solution is going to have to involve compatibility between people of different religions. It gets very difficult, though, given that Israel is a Jewish state. And I think if you ask most Palestinians, they probably want there to be a vastly majority Palestinian state as well, with as few Israelis in there as possible. But I may be wrong. Help me out on this. Abbas is in Redbridge. Abbas, good morning to you.
Hi there. Good morning, Matt. Matt, it's commendable that you're so balanced on so many issues. But I do find it rather unusual when there is balance when it comes to the debates or discussions about Israel and what they do to the Palestinians. Mike Tyson in a ring with a 3-year-old does not require a balanced argument. It's a huge imbalance. And, Hamas and all these are mosquitoes with an elephant standing above them. Then they're minuscule. The reality here is that you have hundreds of thousands. It's your language, Matt, as well, which I, for once, I'm not really in agreement with, which is that, whether they were kicked out or whether they were told to leave. The history is, and I'm not talking about Jewish history or Palestinian history, I'm talking about neutrality here. They agree that these people were forcibly removed from their land, from their homes. And that's continuing till today. So I think I do find it rather unusual when people want to apply balance to a nuclear power with the fourth most capable military in the world against a predominantly stone-wielding opposition. It's ludicrous. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Bet Salem, which is a Jewish charity, NGO, working in Israel, they all agree that repeatedly the Israelis target civilians. They've reported cases of people being in wheelchairs, disabled, with white flags, being shot and run over by tanks. So, this is not something that...
But Abbas, you wouldn't forget the suicide bombings that devastated Israeli society for so long before that very brutal, but the Israelis would argue very necessary wall was built. You can't say that there haven't been atrocities on both sides in this conflict, because of course there have been. I wouldn't say, for my part, that this is a fair fight. Of course I wouldn't. Israel is a nuclear power. It is overwhelmingly more powerful than the Palestinians. The army is overwhelmingly more powerful than the stone throwers and even than the rocket launchers, and they have the shield that protects their citizenry for the overwhelming majority of the time. I've pointed out myself the disproportionality of the response from Israel. So to say that I'm seeking to be balanced, I'm always all I'm trying to do is be objective here, and the objective reality is that, as you say, Israel is overwhelmingly more powerful, and sometimes uses overwhelming force that I think is disproportionate. That is not to say, though, that the Israeli state doesn't have a right to defend the Israel-Gaza border, because of course it does. Wouldn't you agree?
But you see, there you go, Matt. It's your language, you see. They have the right to defend their border. It isn't their border.
Well, hang on. You're saying that the Israel-Gaza border is not... What do you mean by that?
Well, just go Google the map of Israel and Palestine from the 1967, borders to today, and see all the red splodges of Palestinian land that has, through year on year, shrunk. This border is constantly moving for the last 60 years, and the Palestinian territories are shrinking for the last 60 years.
That's certainly the case in the West Bank, which, as I said, has been occupied since 1967, and it's certainly the case, as I have said, and I made no bones about it, Abbas. The Israeli building of settlements in the West Bank since 1967, entirely unacceptable and flouting international law. So I don't quite understand in what way you're accusing me of being biased here.
Matt, but believe me, I'm not accusing you, because I really do like you as a presenter.
No, but on the argument.
No, but look, Matt, what I'm trying to explain to you here is that, you see, people say, Hamas is a terrorist group because they do terrorist attacks in Israel. So, okay, if Hamas are a terrorist group and they kill innocent Israelis, let's have a look at the facts then. 4 times as many Palestinians are dying. 5 times as many Palestinians are dying. In the last conflict, I think 1,800 or 18,000 Palestinian homes were destroyed, and 1 Israeli home was destroyed in that conflict. And the world wants to report that as some sort of a balanced conflict. This is Mike Tyson pounding a 3-year-old. All this nonsense I hear people coming on the radio and saying, but if they really wanted peace, then they would have peace. We Israelis, we want to give them peace.
Abbas, just because we're heading for the news, I want to get this answer out of you. What should the Israeli state do if Palestinians are trying to cross the border illegally into Israel from Gaza? What should they do?
Well, I think they should not humiliate a people.
What should they do? Not what should they not do. What should they do?
Matt, you have to look at the cause before you look at the effect.
No. What should they do? Faced with the current reality, Abbas, what should the Israeli state do?
What does the Israeli state expect if they humiliate and destroy the homes and steal the land?
Look, as I've explained to you, I have no truck, Abbas, with what Israel has done in the West Bank or many of the ways in which Israel has acted. That does not mean that you should not answer the question. What should the Israeli state do, given the attempts, it seems, to storm the border by some Palestinians? What should they do? How should they defend that border?
Well, I haven't seen the videos. Have they actually tried to storm the barriers and come over the barriers into Israel?
This is what I've read, that there have been attempts.
Okay, for people to cross over the border.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know what, Matt? In that case, yes, of course they have a right to stop people if they feel that they're a threat, but not shoot and kill them. That's rather extreme, I would regard.
Abbas, listen, thank you. It's a terribly difficult topic. We'll continue in a moment. Troops have responded with fire, according to the Israeli military, when thousands of people attempted to breach the fence on the frontier. I want to hear your view straight after the news.